Tasty got like a Necco wafer, maybe like Smarties. Yeah, it's been chalky tournament. I had upsets. Beck and Gauer had upsets. Basically, none of them came to fruition. You know what that means, though? We have a loaded regional weekend coming up. Welcome to the latest Gauer Hour. She's Megan Gauer. I'm Rob Joyce. Megan, do you know why I don't gamble on sports? One, it's against company policy at work. Don't do it. Don't break the rules. The real reason, it's stupid. Ask me how my men's bracket's doing, Megan.
How's it doing?
It took me about 5 minutes to fill out. I almost didn't fill one out. I did no research, just pretty much vibes. I'm in the 99.5 percentile. At one point, I was ranked like 9,000th out of 24 million on ESPN. Ask me how my women's bracket's doing.
Not nearly as good, of course.
No, with the one that took like research and God knows how many women's games I've watched this year. And
Right.
no, we're stupid. Don't bet on sports, people. You're going to lose. No matter what you think, you're going to lose. Anyways, very chalky. First time since the tourney expanded to 64 teams that no one seeded 11th or worse won. A couple of 10 seeds won a game, Oregon, South Dakota State. Also, you may notice it's March. No one's 100%. The difference between being hurt and injured. I'm not injured. I'm hurt. Thursday mid-tournament broadcast. Voice is gone. Largely back, but we got our tea. So if my voice cracks, I promise I'm not going through puberty. Puberty comes first, all by the way. All right. Well, sadly, we have to start. The top of the show was changed like 5 times in the last 36 hours. And then that all changed around 10:20 Eastern last night. JuJu Watkins out for the year, torn ACL. Obviously, it's devastating for pick any one of a litany of reasons.
Yeah, just awful to see. Obviously, she went down early in the game. The team confirmed, I think, late last night that it was the ACL, which is what everyone kind of expected, just seeing the injury. But horrible news for JuJu. Horrible news for USC. Like, no one wanted this, obviously.
No, long term for JuJu, like she'll be back. She'll be better than ever. There's obviously a long history of basketball players tearing their ACLs. They come back, they're no worse for wear. Currently, look at Paige Beckers. Cam Brink's going to come back this year. Like Suber tore ACL as a freshman. Like everyone's torn their ACL. A lot of people tear their ACL. Medium turn, doubt we see her even next year. Remember, Olivia Miles tore hers in early March of 23 and then didn't come back until this year. Rory Harmon tore hers last December. She came back 11 months later. So that puts you even at February. So, you're likely looking at 26, 27 before we see her. And at that point, it might be her last year in college. She'd have the option of taking that extra year. Probably her last year. Immediate term, everyone loses here. Fans, obviously USC now has 4 days to figure out how to play without her. That's it.
Yeah. On the longer term, I think just not that it's a good time to tear your ACL, but like unfortunate timing because, like you said, I think most people take a year at this point. So like it's just like all of next season's tournament, like you said, probably we will not see her. But then shorter term, the fans lose. Like every viewer of this tournament loses. USC, you have 4 days. Like I was impressed with how they responded last night. Yes, they were up when she went down, but like you could have easily kind of spiraled after watching your best player go down, and they ran Mississippi State out of the building last night behind Kiki Ariafen. So I don't know. I still think they're gonna probably look decent without her. I think they'll figure it out enough. I wouldn't be surprised if they still make it to an Elite Eight, but it feels like that's likely to be the end of their run.
Yeah, obviously there's a ton of talent on this team. Kiki Ariafen was the second best player on a 2 seed last year. Talea von Oelhoffen was the leader on a 3 seed that made the Elite Eight and was a stone's throw from the Final Four. Kennedy Smith might already be the best defender in the country. She's in the conversation, and she's a freshman. Ray Marshall has started 100 games, or whatever it is in her career, 95, 100 games. They can absolutely still win. My question, though, like JuJu is such the center of your universe. She has a 43% usage rate. That is higher than any year of Caitlin Clark at Iowa. So she's Caitlin Clark of Iowa, just at USC. In isolation, they can beat Kansas State. They can beat UConn or Oklahoma. They can beat UCLA or NC State or LSU. They can beat South Carolina or Texas or whoever. They can't do that 4 times in a row, I don't think.
No,
on such short notice, even with all that talent, given like the center of your universe is just, it's gone and you have to figure it out. And last night was an emotional response, I'm sure. against a team that, like Mississippi State, no offense, they're not any of the teams I just listed.
No.
It's an uphill battle that just, I think it's too much to ask. Like realistically, like a Final Four would be miraculous is too strong of a word, but it'd be hell of impressive if they managed to win even 2 games.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's a big adjustment and not a lot of time when you're also trying to scout a new team and everything else that's coming with the tournament. Like you've got 4 days to get to Spokane, prep for a game against Kansas State, and then you like turn that around to 2 days to whoever you're going to play on what do they play Sunday? Monday.
They play Saturday, Monday.
So it's just not a lot of time. It's a quick turnaround. This time of year, things are challenging as it is, and then to try to just recreate what you're doing to that level at this time of the year, I think is really difficult. Like yes, they could get 1, yes, they could get 2, maybe more. I don't know, but I kind of agree. It feels like it's at some point that's going to be a hurdle. That's too much to overcome, and it could be in the first game, it could be in the 3rd game, but it's probably gonna trip them up at some point.
And I mean, it's a shame because USC had as good a chance as anyone to win it all, and I just it kind of feels unfair. That's how, unfortunately, that's how sports go. That's how life goes. We're gonna go. The goal of this is kind of go like pod by pod. Obviously, we started with the USC pod, which was largely outside of the JuJu news. They responded well. They were already up 13-2 when she went down. They ran Mississippi State out of the gym, like Megan said. I have no takeaways from Cal, Mississippi State. I said last week that game did nothing for me. I will say Bulldogs had like 7 field goals and 15 turnovers in the 3rd quarter and were down 8. If you're going to be not interesting, that's like a sicko mode level of not interesting that I appreciate. Otherwise, JuJu is just even. I mean, if JuJu doesn't get hurt, the games were non-competitive for the most part. Yeah. And there, the team that they will play in the Sweet 16, K-State. Now that we talk, let's put this on a positive spin now for the remainder of the show. K-State and Kentucky was the game of the tournament until yesterday. What a phenomenal game.
Yeah, a great game here, as you expect to get in some of these 4 or 5 games, as they should be. And the other one we'll talk about shortly. It's also a 4 or 5 game, but great game. Aokali is definitely back for Kansas State as well. Maybe not the main story coming out of that game, but she's back.
Yeah, that was the big question mark of, I think you and I, well, you had K-State losing to Fairfield. I didn't have K-State in the Sweet 16. And the big reason, a lot of people were pessimistic, not just us, because you need to see it. And then they tip against Fairfield, first play, catch, finish, Aokali, great. And she didn't have to be, you can tell she's not 100%. She played 15 minutes against Fairfield. She didn't have to play more than that. She only played 28 minutes against Kentucky. Now you would think she got an extra day of rest. So 5 days of rest? She will probably be back close to 100% to what she normally does against USC. Story of this one, though, Tamara Poindexter. I mean, frankly, her and Georgia Amore just going back and forth and dueling was just phenomenal television.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch. And I mean, just the threes from Poindexter were impressive. She had 8 threes. All 24 points of hers came on the threes. Actually, this is a fun little stat that someone threw in her Hoopstat Slack. That ties the most points in a tournament game without a 2-point make or a free throw since at least 2010, which is kind of wild. But just really impressive game for her to step up there and send Kansas State on to the next round.
Yeah, obviously you have your Georgia Amores, your Reagan Beers. Like when All-Americans transfer, they're going to be the most impactful. They're going to get the bigger stats. They're going to top every list of who are the best transfers of the year. Where you really win the portal, like sure, if you get an All-American, you generally win the portal. But if you find the fit from everyone else, think Leah King at Notre Dame, Poindexter at K-State. Like she scored 1,500 points at Tulsa. That doesn't always translate to a P4 level. More often than not, in fact, normally doesn't, at least to any sort of impactful level. But like she's a perfect complement for this team. 40% 3-point shooter, made 8 of her last 10. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that flies under the radar almost the entire year. And that's the big reason why, that's probably the reason why K-State's still playing.
Yeah, exactly. And then from the Kentucky side too, I mean, like they played really well. Georgia Amore probably makes that look that she had at the end of the game to win it 9 times out of 10. This was just the one time out of 10. And I think she's kind of said after the game, like, well, she wasn't going to let one shot define like the last 5 years. But I still think a very impressive first season for Kenny Brooks, even if they're not moving on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I mean, a much better season than you and I both thought
Yeah.
that they would have. I knew they'd be good going forward. I didn't think they'd be anything more this year than like a middle of the pack SEC team. And well, they were a top 4 SEC team. I'm going to ask you a couple of times, like grade the year at solid B+ for Kentucky. The only reason it's not an A- is because the Georgia Amore shot didn't go in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a very solid start to the Brooks era down in Kentucky.
Shout out Amore. I mean, what a career. 2,400
Yeah.
points, 850 assists, All-American, brought Virginia Tech to its first Final Four, rose Kentucky from the bottom of the SEC to a top 20 team overnight. Stunned she missed the look.
Yeah.
Like Kentucky had, 5 chances to win it in that last little sequence, possession and a half, when, including the ball going out of bounds. Still, Clara Strack, Tiana Key, Amelia Hassett are all back. Amore and Deja Lawrence are gone. I don't think Kentucky's going anywhere. And yes, recording or losing Amore and replacing her will be a tall task. So maybe next year is kind of like a plateau year. I don't think Kentucky is going to fall backwards by any stretch.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm interested to see what they get in the portal and things like that. Like, it's so hard to say what teams will look like next year right now because we all know it'll change drastically in the next 2 months. But
portal opened at 6 a.m. Eastern this morning. Everyone's open for business. Now, Kentucky almost didn't even get there. Liberty almost gave us the upset of the tournament. Tremendous effort from the Lady Flames. I'll admit, I had an eye on the game, but Kentucky was going up against Michigan, Iowa State as that game was winding down. Right. And suddenly you look up, it's like, oh, it's a 6-point game. Oh, it's a 1-score game. And then good thing that Amore was there because without her, they probably lose.
Yeah. Yeah. Great effort from Liberty in that. They didn't quite pull it off. Like we said, no one pulled it off in those games, but there was a handful of them that were close and nice games from the Raiders.
Yes.
I feel like had we got like JMU or UNLV actually in the field, we probably would have seen one that actually came through.
You mean the Sun Belt shouldn't have had a conference tournament and they could have given it to JMU who might have upset? A-State led 2-0 and you cannot take that away from them. The rest of it, we won't talk about what happened after that. Good on them. Yeah, so K-State first Sweet 16 since 2002, just their second since 84. Congrats to them. They will get USC. We'll preview all the Sweet 16 games and potential Elite 8 matchups at the end of the show. We'll stay in Spokane 4. Hello, Oklahoma. I had Iowa coming out of this region, and, well, I was wrong.
Yeah, I had Oklahoma coming out, but I never really imagined they would come out in that fashion. Like, I thought that Oklahoma-Iowa game was going to be a good game, and Oklahoma just proved me wrong. I mean, they blew Iowa out of the water. I mean, mostly on the glass. I feel like that was the big difference. I think they nearly doubled Iowa on the rebounds, and Reagan Beers had 13 of those, and there was really nothing Iowa could do to compete there.
In 2 games, Oklahoma has 136 rebounds.
It's crazy.
That's insane. Like, sure, Florida Gulf Coast, fine, they're small. Their biggest player was 5'11", we said last week. 64 rebounds against Iowa. I know they lost fairly handily to South Carolina in the SEC semis, but right now, few are playing better than the Sooners. 8 straight games with fewer than 20 turnovers. They had 3 in the opening 3 minutes yesterday and finished with 15. They dish it better than anyone in the country. Skylar Van's starting to play like Big 12 Player of the Year. Skylar Van. I'd watch. I think people, especially with JuJu down, people just kind of assume UConn would waltz into the Final Four now. And we'll talk about this particular game again with all the others. Keep an eye on Oklahoma. They're starting all of the issues that plague them all year. They're starting to fix them. Yeah,
no, I agree. And I think, like you said, we'll talk about that matchup more, but UConn doesn't have anyone that's going to match up great with a Reagan Beers. But yeah, they just look really good right now. They're shooting the ball well. Like you said, they're not turning it over. If they can keep playing like that, I think, this is a team to certainly keep an eye
on. Shout out Florida Gulf Coast. It's a shame they couldn't keep Chelsea Lyles, the interim coach. She's going with Carl Semesco to the Atlanta Dream. That's not a 14 seed.
No, that was, I thought it was ridiculous when it came out. That was the one I missed on. I don't know how they ended up as a 14, but I think the way that they played Oklahoma very clearly proved that they should not have been a 14 seed.
Yeah, I know the final margin. I don't remember what the final margin was, but it wasn't close. But like that was a game in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Once they
Yeah.
figured out how to adjust to Beers's size, like she was unstoppable in the first half. Then they largely she didn't do much in the second half, and then I think they just kind of whether they ran out of gas or just became too much, whatever. Oklahoma pulled away. They win 30 games every year. At some point, show some respect.
Yeah, I just don't understand that. Like they're usually a 12 seed, and that feels like underseeded, and then to drop them to a 14 to me was just baffling.
Yes. I am curious where they go now that like it's one thing to go from your head coach to your, associate head coach. It's
Yeah.
the same style, it's the same players. Now overhaul, it would be a real shame because Florida Gulf Coast is one of the best mid majors in the country and have been for a decade.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a shame when you see a program that's, like you said, just consistently year after year been really good to the total change. And that doesn't always come with continued success, unfortunately.
No, and you know who also is probably underseeded? I know the final score wasn't close. South Dakota State. Nice, good on them to get a tournament win over Oklahoma State. I looked at that team, especially, first half. I know got away from them at times in the second quarter, and then the second half, UConn was just too much. But I look at the Jackrabbits. I didn't think that was a 10 seed. They're better than some Big Ten teams.
Yeah,
SEC teams, whatever.
Yeah, another team I thought was underseeded for sure. They looked really good. Like you said, they beat Oklahoma State. But it's just a very talented, very experienced team.
Just too much for UConn, who people have been clamoring for it. Heck, I've been looking for it. Selfish Page.
Yeah.
Selfish
There was
Page
just a point in that game yesterday. They were down for a little bit of the game, weren't making shots, and like Paige Beckers just decided she wasn't having any more of them being down. And in a matter of like 2 minutes, I think they went from like down 3 to up 5, and every single point was scored by Paige Beckers.
Yeah, and that's the one knock on her, right? It's she's from Minnesota. She can be too nice. Oh, I have a pretty good look. Well, this person has a really good look. Well, your pretty good look is better.
Right.
Almost every time. It's always better. And now I think you're kind of seeing the urgency of this is it.
Right.
Like if I'm going to win a natty, it's now or never. Like last year in the Final Four game, there was a stretch in the second half. She didn't shoot the ball for like 9 minutes. I think those days are. Yeah. I think we're past that now.
Yeah. I think that she recognizes that this is her last go, and like she wants to cut down the nets in Tampa, right? Like that is the goal for the season for Paige, and I think you're seeing that starting to manifest itself in the way that she's playing.
Yeah, I know her thing is efficiency, and that's what makes her special. Kobe wasn't efficient. Like Allen Iverson wasn't efficient. Caitlin Clark isn't efficient. JuJu isn't always efficient. At some point, if UConn's going to lose, I'd rather it be Paige goes 8 of 23 versus her going 8 of 14.
Yeah.
We'll say that, honestly, the most intriguing thing of the whole weekend from Gamble was Paige got a curtain call. Bobby Griffin got a curtain call. Hazy Fudd didn't get a curtain call. I'm just saying, like maybe she declares. That's everyone's waiting with bated breath in stores. Just saying she didn't get a curtain call.
Yeah.
She had a radio interview last night. I know a guy. Tuned back in for the interview when I saw on TV she was going over to talk to the UConn radio crew, and she got asked and then gave a little chuckle and like 5 seconds of silence. So we'll see. But UConn has bigger things to worry about than whether AZ comes back next year because they got a big game Friday. Last thing from stores. I know we gave Oklahoma State, a lot of crap in jest this year. Heck of a year. Like A-, A type year. Not on anyone's radar. Most wins since 2014. First time ranked since 2018. J.C. Hoyt rumored to be in the mix at other jobs. She's staying. And Staley Hurd's only a sophomore and Micah Gray's a junior. They're not going to be. Now, the next step, you're not going to surprise anyone next year. Right. So that's the next step for the program of how do you handle going in knowing target's not on your back per se, but no one's going to be surprised by you. Right.
It's a different step when everyone knows that you're good and they've proven that this season and they're only going to get better, like you said. But a great heck of a season for them. Played a great game with with South Dakota State in the first round there. I think they were just the unfortunate draw of like getting the 10 seed that was not a 10 seed.
Yes. So there's your Spokane 4 review. Let's go to Birmingham 2. Game of the weekend. Game of either tournament. Men's tournament suck too.
Yeah.
Women's tournament, men's tournament, Maryland, Alabama. The type of loss that I think is going to haunt Alabama for years.
Yeah.
Frankly, if Maryland lost, I would have haunted them for years, given how overtime ended.
No, look, the end of that game was just insane. We were all sitting like at stores, sitting in like the media meal room, just like yelling at the TV for 40 minutes leading up to tip off in stores. But yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Sarah Ashley Barker because you score 40 something points and your team still doesn't win. Like, she made those clutch free throws at the end of the first overtime, but then Alabama just didn't quite have enough in the second overtime. But I mean, Maryland was also really solid in this one. I mean, they got 24 more points, I think, from 3 players. Sarah Tipiasu, Cheyenne Sellers, Michael also had 24, I think. So just an all-round effort from them, and then like 45 from Sarah Ashley Barker. Like, as much as Alabama didn't win the game, you can't say enough about how well she played.
No, I mean, tied for most in program history, or in tournament history, set a program record with the 45 points. I mean, she made 3 free throws that she needed to make. If she missed one of them, they would have lost in regular and first overtime. Like, a baller of a player who progressed every single year in college. It's a shame that's how her team went out. I mean, Bama was up 20. They were up 17 in the third quarter. They couldn't miss. It's a collapse. Like, the defense, just Maryland shot 10 of 13 in the fourth. That's some of that is sure they made some shots. For a program that's going to lose Barker, that's going to lose Zay Green and Aaliyah Nye, like Essence Cody's there. They bring in, I think, 4 top 100 recruits. But like, man, that was this is an opportunity for a team that hasn't been there in 25 years. Like, and it's no guarantee they get back. Like, they're not at that point yet where I just assume that Bama's going to be a top 5 seed every year.
Yeah, exactly. I think, like you said, the 3 players that they're losing have kind of been this program for the last 4 or 5 years now, and they've, like you said, been so good. And yeah, this was the chance, right? Like, you had the seniors, you had the players that were capable of getting there, and you don't. So I think from that perspective, it sucks, especially for a program that felt like it kind of took the next step a little bit this year. And like we talked about a lot this year, like they needed to get the signature win, and then they beat LSU out of down the stretch of the regular season. And it was like, okay, this team could do something, and they fall just a little bit short in this one.
Yes, I didn't think Maryland had that in them.
No, me neither, honestly. I was still shocked that they were the 4th seed.
Yeah, I mean, Bama was like, they were just on fire in the third quarter, and you're thinking, this might end up with like a Michigan type score. And then they showed some guts that I didn't see coming. You mentioned the trio of Smichael, Tibiasu, and Sellers. They scored 66 points in the last 23 minutes of the game. That's wild. Wild. And I mean, Tibiasu, man, like, she's killer. She had that buzzer beater last month. She had the 3 at the end of regulation with her, and Barker went back to back. Like, shame someone had to lose.
Yeah.
Am I crazy that Maryland winning like that, I think, is a boost heading into South Carolina? Like, not necessarily double overtime, but like, they scored again 66 points and just over. They were dead. They were toast, and then they came back and like new life going to Birmingham.
Yeah, that's fair. I think in terms of like your confidence, like seeing yourself come back from that and do it makes it. I think so. If you go into a South Carolina game and get down 10 early or whatever, like you're gonna feel better about your ability to dig out of that instead of just it turning into being down 30. Not that it couldn't turn that into them being down 30, but I do think it's like a good confidence boost going into that game, and just seeing what you can do against South Carolina.
I will say I'm going to get on my high horse now. Disappointed all weekend in the attendance at least half of these sites. College Park was empty. They listed 5,000 in an 18,000 seat arena. College Park's basically DC. It's not hard to get to.
Yeah.
Raleigh, Durham, not hard to get to. There were 4,200 in Chapel Hill last night. Holds nearly 7,000. There were 3,400 at Cameron on Saturday. And I know the men, like women played at noon, men played at 2:40 in Raleigh. I don't care.
Right.
Cameron's a third full. That's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And people, I saw more people complain that we should go to neutral sites. Why? There's going to be 10 people.
Right. I
people.
don't think that's the answer.
No. Now, for the programs that do show up, Gamble was sold out. Notre Dame, like all the places that Notre Dame, LSU, Texas had 9,000 on 2:00 on a Monday. UCLA, USC, like all the places you expect to be sold out were.
Right.
It's everyone else. What are we doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? I'm sure there's going to be, no one went to Duke and North Carolina when they were home. I'm sure there's going to be countless dozens that make the trip to Birmingham for the biggest rivalry in college sports to play in the Sweet 16. Anyways.
No one wanted.
Anyways, last thoughts from the College Park Regional. Good showing from Norfolk State. Head coach Larry Vickers now is at Auburn. Norfolk State, another team. I mean, good showing is probably that's probably not even fair. Like great showing. They had Maryland on the ropes.
Yeah, I mean, Diamond Johnson was so good when she was at NC State. She's been so good and continue to be so good at Norfolk State, even though she's kind of flown under the radar. I think a lot being there, but that was a great game as well. And another one that I don't know, like their resume was a 13 seed, but they just when you have Diamond Johnson on your team, it feels like you're better than a 13 seed.
Right. And then I called the Green Bay upset. It just didn't happen. Game was a little fast. Size was a bigger issue than I thought it would be. Shoot or shoot. Happens. The other two, I guess 3 parts of Birmingham too. South Carolina. Nice effort from Indiana. They just couldn't do enough offensively to help the fact that they threw off South Carolina offensively. But nice effort. Gamecocks ultimately kind of cruise is too strong of a word, but
right.
Largely not tested.
Yeah, like it was a game at times, but it also never really felt in doubt that South Carolina was going to win it.
No, it felt like South Carolina was, again, credit to Indiana. It felt like South Carolina was missing some layups and they just weren't flowing offensively. It's like, all right, is that going to happen for 40 minutes? Like someone, their strength is like someone's going to figure it out. Doesn't really matter who. And then third quarter, Chloe Kitts figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I turned that one on at halftime because I think, was it maybe the K-State Kentucky game that was on right before it? And yeah, it was like you saw the score and you're like, oh, that's surprising, but you're also like, I'm sure South Carolina's gonna figure this out.
No, the effort from the seniors though, South Carolina seniors played really well. Pow only had 9 points, blocking everything. She had 4 blocks. She had 9 all year coming in. Bree Hall was really good. She had 11. Even Sanaya Fagan, like those seniors did the little things well. And I don't know, it was probably a C- day for South Carolina. And they find a way, and the fourth quarter isn't overly competitive. Indiana, I think they should be good next year. Garzona will be a senior. Lily Meister, Shea Chesky are back. They lose Moore McNeil. They lose Parrish. They lose Striplin. But they have a top 20 recruiting class. I think this is like the floor for Indiana. And that's probably, might even be like the basement for Indiana. I think they're looking up. Yeah,
I agree. I feel like a team that had a little bit of a rough start to the year, but it certainly felt like they were figuring it out down the stretch. And then I do think they'll be good again next year.
Nice year for Utah. Lost Lynn Roberts 3 games into the year. They were kind of left for dead. They find their way in the 8-9 game. They're kind of meh down the stretch. But to get back to the tournament with, you lost your head coach, Noah Lissapili. Nice year for Utah.
Yeah, exactly. I think making the tournament was a really good step for this team, when, especially like you said, losing your coach in the early part of the season. That's just a hard hurdle to overcome, and they're still in the field, and you don't win a game, but hey, you made the field. That's more than a lot of teams can say.
Yes, North Carolina region. I mean, the Heels, they're consistent. Like I know I feel like I rag on them all the time, but they're the same team. And credit to them. They drive me crazy for a half against Oregon State. They drove me crazy for a half against West Virginia. I think I said back in December, this is a championship level defense though. Like they made West Virginia's life miserable.
Yeah. Championship level defense, but they just don't have the offense necessarily to pair with it to make it a championship level team. But yeah, I mean, ugly night for West Virginia. I think they shot 24% from the floor. Just painful. A nice preview of what we're in for in the Sweet 16 matchup.
JJ Quinterly, 2 of 12. Sydney Shaw, 2 of 10. Jordan Harrison, 2 of 9. They were 2 of 21 from 3. That's a lot of twos. That's not a lot of makes. 2
Yes.
is not good.
Not good.
Alyssa Utry, she stepped up, looked like the best player on the floor, especially in the second half.
Yeah.
So that was a positive. Because remember, she
Yeah,
didn't play the
21
second.
points for her. I
Yeah,
think that was good to see.
and she didn't play in that second Duke game, so she'll be
Mhm.
back. We don't need to talk about the first Duke game. And then Duke got tested at home. Let's start with the game of the first round. I mean, we both put Vandy in the Elite Eight. I was a diehard Vanderbilt fan for like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
We felt like an hour and a half. What a ride that was.
Yeah, that game was something. I don't really know what to say about that game, but yeah, I mean, they went out with a fight, but they went out early.
Yes. Camille Pierre was in foul trouble. It doomed them. And then once Michaela Blake's fouled out, it's like, all right,
Yeah,
they're toast.
good
On them. Now they're similar to what we said about who the heck we say it about. Whatever team we talked about earlier. Oh, Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
This even like tenfold because they have a superstar. Like handling the hype for Vanderbilt next year. Because they'll probably be a top 20 team in the preseason, fair or not. Blake's and Pierre. Blake's a sophomore, Pierre's a junior. How do they handle this extra attention that they're going to get? Because again, they're not going to take anyone by surprise next year.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the question for them too, because obviously you get those two back, you're going to be really good. I think luckily for them, they've got a coach that's been in that situation where they've had to handle the hype before.
Yes, that's true. Good year for Oregon to get back in the tournament with a lot of newcomers. They won a game. They had Duke on the ropes. They were up. Were they up double digits in that game at one point? No.
They might have been. I didn't really watch much of that one yesterday, to be honest.
No, it was a close game throughout, and then Duke had a big third quarter. Ashlyn Jackson was really good in the third. Duke can be like North Carolina at times. The difference is they can go halves where they score 23 points, and then Ashlyn Jackson comes out and scores 19 in the second half.
Yeah.
Which is maddening in a different way than North Carolina.
Yep. Yeah. Because it's like it's in there, but it only comes out in flashes. Where I feel like North Carolina, what you're going to get. Like the defense is going to be really good, but like they're not going to come out and score 75 points. Like that's just not in their wheelhouse. Where like Duke it is sometimes, and then sometimes they can't top 50.
No, but they found a way against Oregon, so we get Duke and North Carolina. That's it for Birmingham 2. Birmingham 3, which I think will kind of get lost in, we had double overtime game, we had an overtime game, we had JuJu get hurt. Notre Dame looked like Notre Dame.
Yeah. They look back. I think there was, after the last couple of weeks of the regular season and just the way Notre Dame kind of struggled down the stretch in the ACC tournament, there was a lot of question marks about this team. But I think, like we kind of said last week, like the 2 weeks off did what the 2 weeks off was supposed to do, and they look back for sure.
32 first quarter points against Michigan. Never had to take it out of cruise control after that because, well, they didn't need to. And the people who have been slumping, Sony Citron, 16 points, 6 of 12 shooting. That's as important as anything else that Notre Dame did. Leah Tu King had 18 and 15, back to her monster ways after she didn't score against Duke in the ACC tournament. Yeah, the committee overreacted to making them a 3 seed. They looked like the top 5 team that they'd been the entire year, with the exception of a 2.5 week blip, one of which was a double overtime loss at NC State.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that gets lost in it too, because it's like it was such a reaction to like 3 losses and like that double overtime loss to NC State.
To 6 seeds or higher.
Right. Like I don't know. Yeah. Them being a 3 was kind of ridiculous, but it is what it is.
Grade the season. Michigan. I'm giving them an A. Solid.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you won a tournament game. A lot of promise. This team's gonna be really good next year. Like really good next year.
The freshmen look like freshmen.
Yeah.
For outside of the fourth quarter of the Iowa State game, Olsen and Holloway found their footing a bit. Jordan Hobbs, she saved the day against Iowa State. But looking like freshmen can be a good thing in the long term. Of you grow from it, you learn from it. Now, again, they're not going to surprise anyone next year. The core of this team is going to be sophomores. So they're still going to be young next year. But they're going to be kind of like Vandy, the top 20, maybe even top 15 team, even though the final margin doesn't look great. The team they beat in a very entertaining opener to the tournament. Playing games, yada, yada, yada. First real game of the first round of the tournament on Friday. Grade their season, Iowa State.
Well, I don't know. I feel like it depends what what expectation you start from. Because if you start from the preseason expectations, obviously they fell really short. But there was also a time midway through the season that it was like, is this team even going to make the tournament? And they made the tournament. They won a playing game. They competed in that first game. See, it's like it's hard to give them a high rating just because like there was obviously high expectations for this team, and they fell really short of them.
I feel nice in giving them a C-. They didn't ask for the hype. It is what it is.
Yeah.
The fact that they righted the ship and managed to get back into the tournament and kind of salvaged some semblance of success. Like, yeah, you'll take it. And Emily Ryan's gone, but Addie Brown and Audie Crooks are back next year, and that hype train it'll slow down some, but when you have an All-American in Audie Crooks, you're going to have hype.
Yeah.
So now you deal with it. Ohio State and Tennessee was exactly the game I thought it would be. A lot of points, a lot of threes, a lot of easy layups. Buckeyes turned it over a ton. Lady Vols, to their credit, did not. Especially like 14 turnovers against Ohio State, just given the sheer volume of the number of possessions, is really, really impressive. On the flip side, they gave up a 16-0 run in 2.5 minutes. That is wildly hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the Tennessee way, though. It's just like there's so much volatility in the way they play. But yeah, it felt kind of like Tennessee beat Ohio State at their own game because it was really the 23 turnovers that did Ohio State in, and they just couldn't get really anything going beyond Cody McMahon and Jelani Cambridge. But I thought it was a nice rebound for Tennessee, too, because another team that just did not look great down the stretch of the regular season and seems to have benefited from the couple of weeks off here.
Yeah, it's so hard to take too much away from how conference tournament week goes and how even the last couple of weeks of the regular season goes. Because you have 2 weeks. You can do a lot in 2 weeks, especially when you don't have any games to prep for. You can focus on, it's the cliche, like we're focusing on us. For real, all you have to do is focus on you for 10 days until the bracket comes out. I think it's reckoning time for Ohio State. Second straight year they've been bounced at home in the second round. And there's a theme here. They didn't have any answers for tough physical Duke last year. The year before, they had no answers in the Elite Eight for tough physical Liz Kitley. This year, they're non-competitive against tough and physical UCLA and tough and physical USC. They gave up 14 offensive rebounds to Tennessee. That became 21 second chance points. Lady Vols had 15 more second chance points. You lost by 15. Go get a forward. Not a hybrid, not a Cody McMahon. Go get a Reagan Beers, which is easier said than done. But they have a very strict ceiling. They are never going to beat UCLA or South Carolina or Texas or LSU or heck, even like Ole Miss or Baylor until they go get someone physical enough.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good call out. Cody McMahon is really good at what she does, but she can't be your banging bodies down in the post forward that you need to compete at the level they're trying to compete at.
Do what Oklahoma did. Now it's different because Oklahoma is all gas on offense, and then Ohio State is all gas 94 feet on defense. But similar idea of Sooners went out. They got Reagan Beers. They still lead the country in possessions per 40 minutes. They've taken a step forward. You don't have to compromise your principles, but at some point, if you want to take the next step, something's got to change. You have one more year of Cody McMahon, who's a relative unicorn. Jelani Cambridge is really, really good, but you have one top 100 recruit coming in. And maybe it's Elsa Lemela. Maybe they had a 6'4" freshman didn't play this year. Her name's Ella Hobbs. Maybe she got hurt her senior year of high school, redshirted. Maybe it's her. You gotta get something. Otherwise, we're just gonna have the same conversation a year from now.
Right.
Of, hey, you got a bad matchup in the second round or the Sweet 16 or wherever that isn't the Final Four, and you just got bullied. TCU and Louisville, the Haley Van Lith show was entertaining. It wasn't overly dramatic.
No.
Still, it was entertaining, and TCU's off to the Sweet 16 for the first time ever.
Yeah, great game from Haley, 16 points, 10 assists. I think she scored or assisted on over half of their buckets, so she just had a great game, and they're on to the Sweet 16. I feel like there's been a lot of firsts for TCU this year, and this is just another one, but I think this was in a way an expected one, right? Like they were expected to get there coming into this game. Another player though, like Sarah Ashley Barker, that went down with the flight. Jada Curry, 41 points. The team still doesn't win, but 41 points is really impressive.
Without her, it's a blowout.
Yeah.
She was really, really good. Van Lith, she right now the best she's ever played. She's just a maestro pulling the strings. She didn't look overwhelmed by. I didn't really expect her to, but all the pomp and circumstance of she's playing Louisville. It probably helps that I was in Fort Worth and not at the but she's directing things. And it doesn't necessarily, she doesn't need to score 30 to do it. Like you said, she can dish it out. And I mean, if TCU is going to get 41 points from Donovan Hunter and Agnes Emma Nopu, that's going to be hard to beat.
Right. It's more than just what they got from her and Prince. It's all the pieces around them. That's if they're clicking beyond their stars, they are really difficult to beat.
No, they got 6 minutes total from their bench, 0 points in those 6 minutes. So like the margin for error is still slim,
right?
But that doesn't mean it isn't scary, because at this point of the year, like you only play twice a week. They got time; they'll be fine. As long as they don't go to double overtime on their first game, they'll be fine minute wise. Louisville, Nebraska, I thought was entertaining. It was overshadowed a bit. That was going on at the same time as Oregon Vandy. There were lead changes that were close throughout. Louisville makes a couple plays down the stretch. I thought it was a nice year for the Huskers. Lost Natalie Potts in December, and Big Ten especially, it's easy to fall into the back of the pack. They picked up a lot of quality wins. They have a bona fide star in freshman Britt Prince, who famously does not wear ponytail or anything, and Jeff Walz wants to cut it off. Alexis Markowski, I believe, is out of eligibility, but getting to the tourney for the second straight year is an accomplishment given the adversity it faced. And that leaves us with Texas, which that region did very little for me because games were largely non-competitive.
Yeah, I will say I was a little worried about Texas after the first game because I was like, how did they give up 61 points to William and Mary? Like, I don't think we've seen
because that's William and Mary.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. William and Mary was like 12 and 18, and then just kept racking off wins. So yeah, I'm surprised they didn't win the game.
Yeah, fair. But I think they took care of business against Illinois, like held them under 50, largely shut down Bostic, like what you expected in the second round. So they did get their offense going in that first game, though. Like, I don't take too much from anyone scoring 100 points on whatever 15, 16 seed they're playing in the first round. But for Texas to score 100 points is an accomplishment. So I think that was nice to see after the way their offense looked in the SEC tournament.
Yeah, I'm not. That does nothing for me. I'd be disappointed if Texas didn't score 100 on William and Mary.
Fair.
Credit to Illinois for getting there. I just said it for Nebraska. Illinois, they lost 2 starters in the same week. They went into the tournament randomly without Corey Allen, who picked up an injury. So they were without like 5 or 6 players against Creighton, and they somehow make the field as an 8 seed, win a game. Very successful. Interesting. End of an era in Omaha. I'm very curious to see where the Blue Jays go from here and if they can keep this up, because no more Jensen, no more Molly, no more Mogensen.
Yeah, they've really lost what has been the heart of that program for the last 5 years. So it's very interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
And that leaves Spokane 1, where not very similar to Texas. Not much interesting from Pauley Pavilion in terms of Bruins and Spiders. They were tied at halftime. Just Lauren Betts is good at basketball.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway from the weekend at Pauley.
Yeah, I mean, 30 points, 14 rebounds, 9 of those were offensive, 4 assists. Like, I just don't know that there's really anyone in the country that can match up with Lauren Betts right now.
No, and again, she got help. Kiki Rice, 7 of 12 against Richmond, 4 of 6 from 3, 7 assists, 1 turnover. Tamia Gardner had 3 threes. Betts is so consistent that you almost expect maybe not 14 of 17 shooting, but like 20 and 10 is pretty much bookmark that every game. But going forward, if Rice keeps showing up like that, watch out. Number 1 seed for a reason. Credit to Richmond. Proved that they were worthy of their 8 seed. I mean, they killed Georgia Tech.
Yeah, that game was not close at all. And like you said, tied at halftime with UCLA. Obviously, UCLA was able to run away with it in the second half. But just, like, I think you saw how good some of these Richmond players were in that game. Maggie Dugan, 27 points against the number 1 team in the country. Alstrom had 18. Those players are both supposed to be back next year. They're both juniors. Like, this is going to be a good Richmond team again next year.
Yeah, Dugan had 57 points in 2 games.
Yeah.
And then she had 21 rebounds and 13 assists in 2 games. Prove they belong. Guess what? Yeah, Dugan and Olstrom are back. Allie Sweeney's a sophomore. They aren't going anywhere. They should be probably now. They're probably going to be limited. I'm sure they're going to have a heck of a time scheduling anyone in the non-conference. That's that would improve your resume unless you get into an MTE. But they're going to be good next year.
Mhm. Yes.
Similar to Tennessee, Ohio State went exactly as I expected. Baylor, Ole Miss, exactly how I thought that would play out. The difference was I gave a slight edge to Lady Bears last week on a home floor. It was 51-49. I was wrong. Otherwise, yeah, that's exactly how I thought a Baylor Ole Miss game would look.
Yeah, ugly. But Ole Miss kind of wears them down. I feel like we've seen this story with Ole Miss a lot. Like the defense just eventually wears you down, and they get it. Actually, a pretty nice offensive game for Ole Miss too. Though Ole Miss cracked 70. Like that's not something we see all that often either.
We got peak Ole Miss. They forced 21 turnovers. They played 3 quarters where they looked like they could beat anyone in the country. And we got 1 quarter where it looked like they'd never played basketball together offensively. but it's all coming together now for the program.
Yeah.
And like they're a force. Sarah Chino was excellent to start the year. She hit a bit of a wall. She's young in February. She was great on Sunday. Madison Scott, just the model of quiet consistency. She plays in the SEC, so she gets lost with pick your South Carolina big, pick Lauren Taylor Jones at Texas, pick Anissa Morrow, but she just sits there and gets 15 and 10 more games than not. Yeah, Ole Miss they're onto something. Little Paige Bugs for Baylor didn't really look like herself, which I probably shouldn't have expected. She missed a month.
Right.
Massive overhaul coming for Baylor. Andrews, Walker, Vonleh, Felder are all gone. Little Paige Bugs and Fauntleroy are back, but that's a lot of production.
Yeah, a lot of production, a lot of experience, a lot of what's been the heart of this team for a while that they've got to replace this year.
I'm unsure about Aaliyah Mathar. She's a grad transfer, but she came in mid-season. So I don't know if she's back or not.
I'm not sure either.
This is
it's so hard to tell now too, because like half these players still have a COVID year or whatever. It's like, or some of them don't. You have to really dig to figure it out.
I think this was the last year of COVID years, unless
someone redshirted and
right,
like point too,
right. Like Becker's technically has an extra. She's not coming back, but like she has a year, whether you want to call it a COVID year or the injury year. But for the most part, that's largely gone. But yes, I have no idea who still is eligible or isn't because they hand out waivers like candy now. So we'll find out. Grand Canyon proved that you don't win 32 games by accident. They gave Baylor a run for their money.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now Molly Miller's the coach at Arizona State. We knew that was basically the case. Like Mizzou hired Kelly Harper. Arkansas got Kelsey Music from Oral Roberts. All right, well, there's one opening left. Sounds like Molly Miller doesn't have to move.
Yeah.
Which I think that's only like 20 minutes away. She might literally.
Oh, really? I didn't realize it was that close.
I don't think she has to move. So
that's pretty convenient.
Yes,
worked out nicely for her.
Yes. So Ole Miss off to the Sweet 16, second time in 3 years. LSU and Florida State. That was really fun for 20 minutes, and then it was fun for LSU for 40.
Yeah, I feel like this one was just like a classic LSU game from the season. Like it's close for half, and then LSU decides that they want to play to the level that they're capable of playing, and they take over, and that's exactly what happens. Obviously, great game from Latson, still 30 points, but LSU just has so many weapons. I mean, Keller Williams had 28, Morrow 26. They got a ton from Smythe Smith. They just all around good game from LSU on the offensive end.
I don't even know if LSU played poorly in the first half. No. They're just Florida State's really, really good offensively.
Yeah, that's
until they're not. 31-6 third quarter. 31-6. That's my problem with Florida State. You watch so many games this weekend. You realize how hard some teams make it look to score. Putting the ball in the hoop looks wildly impossible sometimes. There are teams that can't crack 50 when facing some resistance. Well, Florida State's cracked that code. They have figured that out, and they can't stop a traffic cone. NCAA tournament teams this year average over 80 points a game against them. They played 11 of them. It's the same thing every single time.
Yeah.
They have a special talent in Tania Latson, Michaela Timpson for that matter. They don't need to be South Carolina. They just have to be not a train wreck, and they are a train wreck defensively. And it hasn't changed in 3 years.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of Caitlin Clark's earlier seasons at Iowa, where the defense was just really, really bad. And then it was never great, but it got better by the time she was a junior, by the time she was a senior. And that's why that team was able to do what it could do. But until Florida State makes some progress there, like this type of stuff is going to be their ceiling. We're not going to be talking about them in the Final Four.
No, they would need the perfect stars to align. They would need to be like the 7 seed and win your first game against the 10, and then play Duke in the second round, and then play UNC in the Sweet 16, and like teams that they've both beaten and lost to this year. So even that's not guaranteed. But yeah, they need too many stars to align until they figure it out. 50% on defense, not even 100. It's 50.
Exactly.
But hey, they beat George Mason. That went as we said it would. Patriots have a good D. Haven't seen an offense like that. Congrats on your first tournament appearance. And that leaves us with weird weekend for NC State. I don't like, if you're a top 3 seed, I do not like when I have to pay attention to your game in the first round.
Yeah.
Too many games, too many basketball games to watch, take care of business. And I had to turn on NC State, Vermont. So that annoyed me. And then they came out and I basically didn't have to turn on Michigan State, NC State in the second half.
Yeah. Doesn't make a lot of sense because one of these teams was the 15 and the other was 7. Obviously great game from Vermont there. Really tough fight against NC State, but I don't know. I feel like they figured something out against Michigan State, clearly. Got going, and yeah, that game was never competitive, really.
Quotes that aged poorly. Michigan State's Theron Halleck on whatever 2 days ago was, Wednesday. I don't think, like Harvard, they are ready for our defense. Whoops. They were ready for the defense.
They were ready.
They shot 70% in the first quarter. They made 15 threes, the most in the game this year. Their previous high against the tournament team was 9, so they made a lot more threes. And then Halleck on the other one went 1 of 8. So correct, Harvard was not ready. Crimson shot 28% and committed 20 turnovers. Don't keep bulletin board material.
Yeah.
No, lesson learned. Shout out Harmony Turner.
Yeah,
great career. I don't know. I'm not a scout. I don't know how it translates to the pros. I hope she gets a shot.
Same. Yeah, I don't know enough about W and drafting and all that stuff, but it feels like she's the type of player that someone at least should bring into camp and give her a shot.
Once you get beyond, like, yeah, one day JuJu will be good in the W. Or Paige Beckers will go first. Like, yeah. After that, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a scout. All right, so there's your recap. Preview. We will go in chronological order. The first game on Friday at, why are we playing this game at 2:30 on a Friday? 2:30 Eastern from Birmingham in front of maybe someone you know. And Duke UNC, round 3. Heels won the first game in overtime, 53-46. Duke won the second game, 68-53. No, Utsby. I don't think Renee Kelly played in that game either for UNC. What do we look for round 3?
Hopefully both teams will crack 50 points. That's my hope for this game. But at least I guess it's at 2:30, so less people will see if it doesn't happen. But enough of me hitting on the scoring here. I mean, like, these are going to be two really, really good defenses. It's not going to be a high scoring affair. I think this is going to come down to who from Duke or North Carolina can step up and give the team what they need on the offensive end. I think we've seen Utsby do it for them for North Carolina against West Virginia yesterday. We've seen a variety of players do it for Duke. Like, if Duke can find a way to bring a quarter or two of their, like, we actually can score 70 points in a game offense, I think Duke wins this, but it's going to come down to who steps up and makes the plays on the offensive end, because it's going to be a defensive battle.
If one, I hope Toby Fournier isn't sick. I don't know. She has a week to figure it out. If Ashlyn Jackson can be second half Ashlyn Jackson, not even like just need to score 19 points in a half. Just don't go scoreless like first half Ashlyn Jackson did against Oregon. You know what you're getting with North Carolina. Not fun to watch offensively, but it's consistent. Here are their last 11 games against tournament teams. They're averaging 64 points a game. And mind you, they played Florida State twice. Bad at defense. They played a 14 seed Oregon State, who counts because they made the tournament. And Louisville, who was like 200 something in scoring D. 70 Oregon State, 58 West Virginia, 55 NC State, 60 Florida State, 53 Duke, 79 Louisville, 66 NC State, 65 Cal, 86 Florida State, 46 Duke, 66 Notre Dame. They're not going to crack 70. So can Duke? That's the question. If Duke makes shots, they'll win. If they don't, probably North Carolina, because you know what you're getting. Now, let's assume South Carolina, Maryland. Can Maryland hang?
I just don't see it. And I mean, there's a path, right? Like they've got to make shots, like they kind of did in the second half yesterday. But I just think this is a tough matchup for Maryland. Um, you know, I think the defense is like it's going to be difficult for Sellers, for Tibiasu, for Michael to get what they want to get on the offensive end. Like South Carolina is going to do a good job of taking them out of that. And I think the one thing going for Maryland is like they've been pretty good on the glass this season. Like if you can compete with South Carolina on the glass, I do think that helps you. But I don't know. I have a hard time seeing them being able to like threaten an upset here.
They are almost 300th nationally in scoring defense. They got to get some stops. Now, I don't think Smichael, Sellers, and Tibiasu have to get going. Two of them do. Like South Carolina, their best thing on defense is they shut off your valve. Whatever your valve is, they shut it down. So if they decide we're not going to let Kayleen Smichael score, well then Sellers and Tibiasu have to figure it out because Bree Hall can't guard everyone.
Right.
Or if it's Sellers and the other, like whatever combination, whoever Bree Hall and Tessa Johnson get, someone else has to score. That's the only way I see it happening. Because you're right, they can hang on the glass. They haven't been out rebounded in some of these big losses. It's just the defense, and then in their case, against an elite defense, can they get enough?
Right.
So let's assume South Carolina wins. Does Duke or North Carolina hang in the Elite Eight? Because I don't think they're going to score enough.
No, I don't think either team can score enough. Like I think, yeah, the defense is good, but like South Carolina's gonna find a way to score the ball, and I can't see Duke or North Carolina scoring enough to hang.
I think it would look a lot like the Indiana game. Like even if you contain them for a half or 3 quarters and hold them to 60 some odd points, you will also probably be contained. And at that point, I'll just take the Gamecocks' depth of someone will step up. I don't know who. It could be Full Wiley, but then there's other games where she played 10 minutes on Sunday, whatever day it was. Tina Pow hasn't really exploded yet in a game this year. Tessa Johnson randomly hasn't. She had 20 points in the national championship game. Didn't do that all year. Like someone for South Carolina. Couldn't tell you who will step up. The other region Friday is Spokane 1. So you're going to get, I think this could be the most fun game of the whole weekend, at least of the Sweet 16. NC State LSU.
Yeah. This one
really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some offense. Obviously, like NC State's guard, so fun to watch. LSU's kind of trio. I'm really excited for this one. I think this one should be, like you said, possibly one of the best games of the whole weekend. Certainly the best game of the Sweet 16.
It's not perfect like for likes, but like, does it get better than Flau'jae Moore Williams against James Brooks and Rivers?
No.
I fear for the NC State side, who slows Morrow? Like, do you trust Trigger to handle her? Do you hope Rivers' athleticism maybe can make up for the lack of strength? Conversely, I don't know who for LSU guards Rivers, maybe Flau'jae, like not from a scoring standpoint, from just everything standpoint.
Yeah.
She can give you 12 points and then have 9 assists and 12 rebounds and kind of not quite handle Van Lith, but like she can kind of control what NC State does without putting the ball in the hoop.
Yeah, I agree with that. This one kind of almost feels like it comes down to like those three are going to be good for both sides, but what else do you get? Like someone like Samaya Smith, like can she have another big game? And like, is that the difference maker? I feel like the difference maker in this one is not going to be, I mean, it could end up being, but probably not going to be one of those 3 names for each team. It's probably going to be who gets more from everyone else.
I picked LSU initially to make the Elite Eight, so I will stick with that pick.
Same. I think I'm going to go with LSU still. I just think this is a team like those players have experience in NCAA tournament wins. So does NC State, but I just think the size for LSU is maybe going to be a little bit too much for NC State to handle.
And then 10 o'clock. Oh, well, I guess it makes sense they spaced out.
At least it's Friday. It's a Friday.
At least they spaced out the games, unlike the men's tournament. But the counter to that is 10 o'clock Eastern. It's in Spokane, I get it, but still. UCLA Ole Miss. I think a lot of people just kind of write in UCLA. I think this is going to be a game.
Yeah. We've seen Ole Miss create games in games that people don't expect them to be in. And like, I don't know that UCLA has really played anyone like Ole Miss this season that has that kind of defense. So I think when you haven't played that, it takes a minute to get used to, and like it wears you down. I still think Laura Beth is going to have the obvious advantage in the post, and that's probably going to be enough for UCLA to come out of this one, but I think their guards are going to have a heck of a time playing against the Ole Miss defense.
Yeah, Ole Miss is going to try and disrupt UCLA offensively. They're going to try and force turnovers, which is doable for all UCLA does well. They have a 18, 20 turnover game in them. They're going to go toe to toe in the glass with them. Rebels can do all of those things. They want this game probably in the 50s. 50 seems too unrealistic, but
Yeah.
they can try to keep this game in the 60s. The question is, just can they score enough? Can KK Deans be impactful off the bench and make threes? Can Madison Scott stay out of foul trouble going up against Betts? Can Kennedy Todd Williams find a way to be more efficient? She's 33% in her last 3 games. Do I think all of these things can happen? Sure. All of those things need to happen to win. I also picked UCLA to win it all, so I can't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that likely UCLA comes out of this. Like I said, I think just Betts is probably enough, but like if everything falls right for Ole Miss, like this could be an upset.
Like 70 is probably the magic number. UCLA hits 70,
Yeah.
they probably win. If that's in the 60s,
yeah, it's anyone's game.
Yeah, we're going to be staying up late into Saturday morning, if that's the case. Saturday begins, I believe it's a little later in the day. The first game's not till, oh, no, I lied. It's 1 o'clock. TCU Notre Dame. So we got a couple of rematches in Birmingham 3. Obviously, Cayman Islands on Thanksgiving or day after thereabouts. Frogs raced a 14-point second half deficit, win 76-68. That's the game that put them on the map. They weren't in the top 25. They were like barely in. They've lived in the top 15, top 10 pretty much ever since. I don't see a repeat of that per se, but I still think it's close. I do favor the Irish, though, in this one.
Yeah, I think what we saw from Notre Dame this weekend convinced me that they are, back at what we've seen from Notre Dame most of this season. So I do favor Notre Dame, but I wouldn't count TCU out of this. So I think, obviously, Sedona Prince is probably going to have an advantage over Notre Dame. Inside, Haley Van Lith is just playing at such a high level right now. Like you said earlier, like the best she's looked in her career. And like I'm not going to count her out of finding her way into the Elite Eight.
No, the difference might be who controls the tempo.
Yeah.
Notre Dame is 11th in possessions per 40 minutes. TCU is 280th. So if Haley Van Lith controls the show, or if Olivia Miles, Hannah Hidalgo run the show, that will probably be the difference. You're right. In that game, now Sedona Prince had 20 and 20 with 8 blocks. And then Notre Dame's bigs, Kate Koval, did not score. She was 0 of 9. Leah Tu King had 13 rebounds. She was 2 of 9. Now, Maddie Westbell didn't play in that game. She starts. King will probably, and that slides King to the 5, at least for the starting lineup. And then Koval and Eliza Carlin come off the bench. Obviously, they can't give up a 20-20 to Prince. The bigs can't shoot 2 of 18. And they don't have, they don't have the classic big that Prince is. But they have enough options down low. I think that they can do enough to at least mitigate the fact that they got, just pawned inside in November. I don't think that'll happen quite to that extent again.
Yeah, and I think that's the key here. Like, obviously, Notre Dame has the more talented backcourt here, as much as like Haley Van Lith could come out and be the best player on the floor. I mean, it could be him, Hidalgo, it could be Olivia Miles. There's, I think 3 options that could look like the best player on the floor in this game, but Notre Dame just has the edge in terms of they've got 3 players that are really, really good in their backcourt, and if they can just kind of hold their own inside, I think they're going to be fine.
And the winner of that one will get another rematch. Texas and Tennessee, January 23rd in Austin, 80-76 Longhorns. Very entertaining game. 5-point game at halftime, 1-point game in the fourth quarter. Texas made enough plays and won. I don't know what to make of this because, just Tennessee's so volatile. So that this could go any number of ways. And it wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, you could tell me that Tennessee loses by 20, and I'd be like, okay. You could tell me Tennessee wins by 8, and I'd also say, okay. Like I think this one could go either way. I think if Tennessee is going to pull it off, they're going to have to make shots. I think that's the key thing, right? Like they've got to shoot the ball decently from threes, and if you start trading threes with Texas, like that's an advantage Tennessee because Texas isn't going to make a whole lot of threes here. Both teams are probably going to try to force turnovers, so that's pretty even. They're both good on the glass. Like this one really, as much as like you don't normally think of like 1-4 games being a little bit of a coin flip, it kind of feels like a little bit of a coin flip.
Yeah, I mean, going for Texas in that first game, they only committed 12 turnovers, and they were plus
Mhm.
15 on the glass. They were plus 20 in second chance points, and they attempted 10 more field goals. Like, that's what makes Texas good. They
Right.
own you on the glass, and they attempt 10, 15 more shots a game for you, and they make them at a higher rate than you, and they win. Going for Tennessee in that game, they shot 50%. Only a couple teams have done that against Texas this year, and they made 9 threes to Texas's 1. If Texas can take care of the ball, beat the press, it turns into easy points, that suits the Longhorns well. It's the half court that can get kind of muddled. So
Yeah.
this is a game that kind of suits Texas nicely because there won't be a whole lot of half court. If Tennessee's weird on the glass. Like, they get out rebounded randomly by 15, and then the next game they'll out rebound someone by 15.
Yeah.
And it's not opponents that it's not like, yes, they'll out rebounds East Tennessee A&T by 30, but they can also lose that rebounding battle. It's
Right.
weird. So if they don't get hammered on the glass and they make enough threes, they absolutely have a shot. And that's probably going to be a pro Tennessee crowd.
Yeah.
I know it's probably equidistant. I mean, Lady Vols fans travel, and if they have a shot at the Sweet 16, like, they haven't been here that often in recent years. I think they're going to pack the place.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
This is my favorite batch of potential Elite Eight games. We don't need to go through all 4, but like, give me Texas TCU or Texas Notre Dame again, or Tennessee against either of those teams. Like, Lady Vols Irish would be fun.
Any of those will be fun. Any of those would be really fun.
Tennessee Notre Dame might kill the UConn alumnus in you, but like, fun game.
Yeah. No, any of those games should be very fun matchups.
I had Notre Dame beating Texas in the Elite Eight, so I will stick.
That's what I have too, I believe.
And that leaves us with Spokane 4, which the first game of that is, so both of the Birmingham games will play on Saturday afternoon. And then in the evening, they go out to Spokane, UConn, Oklahoma. Huskies need to be on standby. They need to replicate their game in Columbia, where they got every 50-50 ball. They out-hustled South Carolina on the, and Jenna Alfie has to be impactful. And Sarah Strong cannot get into foul trouble.
Yeah.
Because if they do, Oklahoma will destroy them on the glass. And that's I think, how Oklahoma stays in the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think they have to be able to stay on the glass, and then they have to be able to match up some with Reagan Beers, and I think a lot of that comes down to Jenna Alfie and maybe a little bit of Ice Brady as well. I think we've seen some more minutes from her in the last couple games. I don't think they have to win the battle on the glass. I think they just have to stay in it, and I don't think they have to, like, you're not gonna stop Reagan Beers, but you just gotta, like, she can't have 20 and 15. And then kind of blocking down their shooters on the edge. I think the way UConn's playing right now, though, like you said, the way Paige is playing, the way Sarah and AZ played over the weekend, like, they look good. I think Oklahoma on the flip side, like, how do you guard Paige Beckers? How do you guard AZ Flood? And Sarah Strong just doesn't matter that she's undersized, always seems to find a way down low.
Yeah, she just needs to stay on the floor. Now, Oklahoma, they've looked really, really good. Florida Gulf Coast is a statistically good defense. It is against Atlantic Sun competition. Iowa is 201st in scoring defense. Like, UConn is a different level of defense. They aren't going to turn it over 20 times like Iowa did. They have not turned the ball over 20 times in a game all year.
Right.
They have turned it over more than 15 times in a game 3 times the entire season. They are going to protect the ball. So Oklahoma has to play like they have basically since February against everyone but South Carolina. And UConn doesn't need to play perfect on offense. It would just behoove them to not have one of those 4 of 24 games from 3.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
make
some bursts.
Go 7 of 24 if you're going to have an off night, or 8 of 20. Like, what? My point is, make enough threes, and I still give the edge to UConn. I wonder if they go small as well. Like, we saw this yesterday. If you put Strong at the 5, you draw Beers away from the basket a little bit, and then it just kind of opens things up for everyone else. I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, they do go small a lot. We went small against USC, but even with Urieffin in there, I expect we'll see some of it. They'll go small, a decent amount of the game. I think for UConn, a lot of times, just like going small allows them to have their best talent on the floor in a lot of cases. Like, you just get so much from having KK Arnold or Ashlyn Slade out there too, with your combination of, Paige, AZ, and Sarah.
And that leaves us with the last game of the Sweet 16 is maybe the most intriguing because we just don't know. USC and Kansas State. I mean, going in, I gave USC obviously the favor here because they had the best player in the country, and now they don't. So I don't know what it looks like. Now, going for them, they have the size inside to handle Aoka Lee, and frankly, they could probably do it one-on-one. Doesn't always have to be Kiki, doesn't always have to be Marshall, but like you don't need to necessarily put 2 on Lee. I just don't know what it looks like, especially in the backcourt. Like Von Oelhoffen's going to have to score more. Kennedy Smith's going to have to score more. Avery Howell's going to have to score more. I'm missing someone off the bench, but like they're going to have to score more than they've been relied upon at any point this year.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be interesting to see how they adjust going into this one. Like you said, like they're just going to need more from that backcourt, and then I think we saw Kiki Ariafen really step up in the Mississippi State game to get them very comfortably to the Sweet 16. But like obviously, she's going to have a much harder time inside against a K-State team that has Aoka Lee. So it's just going to be interesting to see how much she can do to carry them, and then how much they can get from everyone else. And then on the flip side for Kansas State, like obviously you've got the matchup between Lee and Ariafen and Rhea Marshall, but then your guards like Serena Sandell has been so good. Who else can step up and make shots?
Right, like Jalen Glenn, Poindexter. One of them has to have a big night, probably 2 of them, and then they just have to get enough timely stops on the other end, which suddenly looks a lot more doable. Who you got?
I still think I go USC here. I just think that pure talent, the USC probably still has more. And I just think that they figure it out enough in this one.
I'll agree with you, which would set up I have UConn beating Oklahoma. I think it'll be closer than people may just assume, just given how well UConn's looked.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think, for the casual, UConn just comes with a certain, they're going to win.
Right.
Not necessarily. So I would set up a rematch of USC UConn back in December. Trojans won by 2. Looked like they were going to blow them out of the water in Hartford. Huskies stormed back. Sarah Strong fouled, shooting a 3. Missed the first, had to miss the third, and didn't quite make it work. Couldn't hit the broadside of a barn in the first half, charged back in the second half of the defense. AZ only played, 2 first half minutes in that game? Remember, she was hurt. I think, especially with no JuJu, I almost think if UConn wins the Sweet 16 game, that they will have a much easier time in the Elite 8 against this USC team.
Yeah, I think this is the unfortunate reality of the injury for USC. Like, I still think they can make an Elite 8. I just think that UConn is probably going to be too much without JuJu. It's unfortunate because in addition to all the reasons we already talked about why that injury is so unfortunate, like it takes obviously a lot of the juice out of this expected kind of Elite 8 game that has gotten so much attention since the bracket came out. But as talented as USC is, I think without JuJu, just like the combo of Paige, Sarah, and AZ is probably too much for them to overcome.
I think, remember in that second half, when UConn upped the defensive pressure and USC couldn't take care of the ball. Now, JuJu obviously has a turnover in her game.
Yeah.
But I think they're just going to ramp up pressure on those freshmen and dare them to, I'm going to be in your girl for 40 minutes, beat me. Right. And I don't know if they're going to protect the ball enough. Like there's obviously a scenario if Iriafen owned everything on the glass in that game. And if she just dominates inside, it's not going to be a blowout. I just think UConn has too much firepower.
Yeah, I agree. And I think your point about the defense is a good one too. It just feels like a situation where like KK Arnold is gonna thrive. She's gonna be in everyone's face. And like even if you hang around for a little, that's gonna wear you down eventually.
Well, the bad news is we only have 12 games this weekend. The good news is you can watch it all day because they're all spaced out. So from 2:30 Eastern Friday till, 12:15 a.m. Saturday morning, you can watch nothing but basketball. And then you get to do it again from 1 o'clock till about 10:30 on Saturday. And we get to do it again on Sunday.
Yes.
Where will you be watching these games? Just at home?
From my couch, yeah.
Well, then you enjoy. And we will talk next week where we will have Final Four in Tampa. Enjoy, everyone.